just got down from Blackpool, and up in Lancashire they're currently considering the applications to frack again. They fracked for the first time in 2011, and for anybody who doesn't understand what fracking is, it's an extraction technique for shale gas that is bound to, at some point, inevitably harm your air and water supplies. It puts methane into the atmosphere, it drills through your aquifers, passes through your groundwater, and when they're done with it, they walk away and they leave a great deal of waste underground. And I don't think I know of one private corporation that's going to come back and check a year later, 5 years later, 10 years later, to check the integrity of what they left behind is not causing harm to the agriculture and groundwater of that region. So why come here and why occupy Rupert Murdoch, which is the most ghastly visual image that I keep getting every time I say occupy Rupert Murdoch. I see me wearing him like, you know, sheep's clothing. And but there's a real core reason for this. You know, when we were in Balcombe year before last in the summer, it was the first a lot of people had heard about fracking. And one of the first things they saw was the Sun brought out a voucher saying, Britain wants fracking, sign here, support fracking. Thankfully it died very, very quickly, that campaign, because it was never going to take off. But it was their attempt to try and make us want this. Now, why would they want to? When you look at the fact that 80% of our publishing houses, TV, news, radio news, and the newspapers and so on, and sorry, where was that? TV, radio, newspapers, and publishing houses are owned by the 5 billionaires. It's not their money that's the problem, it's the power and influence they wager with that money. And they have this influence, and of course all these people are also invested in oil and gas and various other projects, so it serves them well to say that shale gas is a good thing. In Balcombe, the people there, it was a lovely village that was torn and divided by this subject. At first they started out at nearly 90% against it when they did a street-by-street survey. And then came the press. Once the camp had set up to object to fracking, all of a sudden the press was saying domestic terrorists defecating in driveways. Now, I think if anyone had seen who was camping at Balcombe, you know, there were engineers and professors and PhD students and NGOs and Green Party people. There's all sorts of lovely people who simply gave a damn about the air and the water in the community. And the village was so welcoming, they all came down the hill singing Jerusalem. You couldn't have asked for a more idyllic and beautiful thing to happen. And we were very welcomed, and at night around the campfires the villagers would come down and join us. And yet the media on a daily basis said how much we had torn this village apart, that we were rampaging through the streets. I mean, we were sat having tea and scones. It really was, you couldn't have got anything more polar opposite to what was actually happening. And I think the saddest thing, it wasn't so bad for the activists. We were kind of used to what the media does to us when it undercounts our numbers at marches and so on. But for these people who, this was the first time in their lives probably they called on their democracy for help, and they'd realised they didn't have a democracy at that point because they had Francis Maude as an MP, and Francis Maude had given Lord Brown his first job in government, and Lord Brown was the head of Quadrilla, the company coming to extract the shale gas. So this upset the community a great deal about their local politics, but again, maybe they thought it was just that. And then when they were reading the papers, they suddenly realised, and this was the saddest thing to see, that not only was the media lying to them about what was happening in their village at that moment, right under their noses where you couldn't deny it was a lie, but it then made them question, what have I ever believed in? What story was true? Was it, you know, every time I thought, this is the enemy, was it the enemy? And every time I was given an opinion to swallow, was that the right opinion to swallow? Because in the end, if you've got 80% of your media controlled by 4 corporations, all of whom have vested interests in politics and various investments, then you've got to ask yourself, what is their agenda? And what is their, why should they give you the truth? You know, when I was first left high school in Hong Kong, I was a journalist, and I did 2 years of journalism under one of the most amazing editors, a guy called Humphrey Hawksley, who's with the BBC still. And he taught me very early on how to be a human tape recorder, just to see it, report it, don't have an opinion on it. It's not your place to have an opinion. It's not your place to steer public opinion. It is your place to report what you saw accurately. And when I came back to the UK, after that I assumed I'd go back to being a journalist, but when I got back here and it was like, oh yeah, that's the left-leaning, that's the right-leaning, and I couldn't understand how at any point you could call these things newspapers or the media, because if they have an agenda and a bias to a particular particular political party, how does that make them honest and true if they're trying to go down some party line? So occupying Rupert Murdoch, as ghastly as it is an essential thing, and we're going to be here every day throughout the week, because just to get the passers-by who walk past this building and assume that somewhere in there is some people working with integrity who produce your news every day and tell you, hey, this is what really happened. And don't forget, 100% of Rupert Murdoch's media empire, and that's across the world, 100% of it supported the Iraq war. Now, how does that happen? That you get 100% agreement on the circumstances of war that we now know is a lie, that there wasn't 15 minutes till we were all going to die in our beds, and we know none of this was true, and yet he managed to get 100% of his papers going, yeah, you know what, that's absolutely true. So at some point we have to say, stop, this is enough. You know, for people who are here, we're okay. We read alternative media. We have people like Obi who come and live stream. We have Nina and Tom who come and they film things. We look at people who come and they do the real thing, and you just get the images and the speaking that happens on that day, not someone's opinion. So we're okay, but the rest of the country isn't. Those who are believing the lies that are put out to them every day. And I think probably one of the most worrying things is that there's also publishing houses that produce books and matter for our schools and our young people. And I think that particularly, I know as a mother and a grandmother, this deeply concerns me about what it is that's being fed to my young grandchild's mind. Anyway, so if you could, anybody who wants to volunteer and come back here on a daily basis, either find out more, hand out the information, see Donahoe put this together so well, and support this action, we would really appreciate it, because in this world we absolutely need access to truth and access to information, and at the moment we're being denied that by our mainstream media. Thank you.